ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. وبعد. Okay, first, we'll try to finalize a few things relating to today's earlier discussion, and then we will be dealing, the brothers will be dealing with some other case studies or workshop based or related matters. We have with us today our brother Dr. Abdullah Brown, who gracefully agreed to come and attend and watch what's going on. So, Jazakallah khairan for this. First of all, in regarding to the reading material, I would like to say a couple of points, and that probably will answer some concerns that one of the sisters has, which is that, as usual, I have a hard time finding good reading material for you to read and prepare for the quiz and for the lecture on Saturday. So I had this problem this week because I had a book that was translated by written by one of the professors at King Saud University in Riyadh. I think his name was something Al-Majid, Khalid Al-Majid. Yeah. And the translator, it appears to me, Abdurrahman Murad, the son of Mahmoud Murad, one of our old friends who was with us in Al-Quran wa Sunnah Society, and he was his chairman before me. Anyways, what happened is, I found this file with the almost exact title as this lecture or this discussion for today. So I thought, perfect. And it's written by somebody that we expect him to be good. And I started, but it was in the PDF format that needed OCR, and then after OCR you need to do a lot of editing, which I started working on last week because the lectures were switched, the titles were switched. So before the switch I was working on that file, cleaning it and editing it and formatting it in a nice way that you can read. I finished this week around Tuesday morning. Then I was about to send it as a reading material, and then but I started going through it. And until then, I did not go through it carefully to see if it is suitable. But then at that point, I realized that the book was not suitable. And after spending maybe at least 10 hours, maybe 15 hours working on it, I realized it's not suitable. It is too harsh in its approach to the non-Muslims, and it's not suitable for da'wah. So I thought, and that is the concern that the sister has, I share. I sympathize with what you're saying because I felt the same when I read the book. And I decided that it's not suitable to send. And probably the reading material that I selected from it, which was only the first 9 pages, I had 2 comments in the bottom that shows that I disagreed with the way that the wording of some statements. So, basically, the book as a whole emphasizes the fact, the element or the factor of hate. Okay? That we should hate non-Muslims, and all our dealing with them should be based on this hate. Okay? I mean, we hate them, yes. Why? Because they disobey Allah in the worst possible way, which is to take partners with Him, to disbelieve in Him. So, in this regard, we are required to hate them. This is part of our belief as Muslims. Okay? As I mentioned the hadith earlier, and the hadith that there are many hadith, many ayat that emphasize that our love should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. But at the same time, and especially in this kind of setting, and for us as du'at, as chaplains, we are supposed to highlight more and emphasize more the element of mercy. The element of mercy. And that's why you saw that the other file that I sent you, which is something that I'm working on, a book that I started working on a while back, it emphasizes the element of mercy in Islam. That we are people of mercy, following the Prophet of mercy, whom Allah described him as being sent as mercy for the peoples, for the nations. And peoples means all, humans and jinns, everyone. So Allah sent him with that. And He brings mercy, but mercy to people, to everyone. But there are people who embrace this mercy and accept it, live with it. These are the Muslims. There are people who reject it, and these are the outright kafirs, and there are people who never see it or never understand it, and these are the people that we hope that one day they will see the truth and become Muslims.
I think the most important thing to point out here is that we hate them because of their kufr. And
Definitely.
we don't hate them because of their person, we hate them because of their kufr. I mean, this is a focal point that needs
Definitely. We agree on this. I don't think we have disagreement. This prompted Dr. Brown to say something, so inshallah we will.
Yeah, if you don't mind my just making a comment about this. When I first became a Muslim, one of the books that really helped me a lot was Love.
Can you please put your mouth closer to the microphone?
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to say was when I first became a Muslim, one of the books that really helped me a lot was Love and Hate for the Sake of Allah. And with regard to this topic in particular, a point that was made in the book that for me was just very beneficial was that yes, we love for the sake of Allah and we hate for the sake of Allah, but our love and our hate has to be moderate. Okay? Because the person you hate today may be your brother tomorrow or your sister tomorrow, and the person that you love today may be your enemy tomorrow. You know, our hearts are between the fingers of Allah, and we have all seen how people can go from Islam to Kufr and from Kufr to Islam. I was just having this exact discussion yesterday with some brothers about how we conduct ourselves in the West. And the importance of understanding that we have to moderate our conduct according to the context. In the past, when Islam was dominant, in an area, and they were taking the jizya from the disbelievers, there were even lessons in how to take the jizya. Like, for example, to keep the disbelievers standing in the sun and standing for a long time, to humiliate them, and to let them feel that they were basically, being humiliated for the fact that they were disbelievers. Okay, when you took their jizya, you were not to take the jizya with your hand with the palm up. If you extended your hand with the palm up, this is like the posture of somebody who is begging, or sort of like asking to receive. No, you were supposed to take the money with the palm down and actually take it roughly from the person, and so on. But these attitudes were in the context of that time. In the period in which we live in now, you have to just understand that will not work. I mean, if you use that kind of harsh attitude in the West, it will get you into the headlines. I mean, you will you will do nothing but hurt the impression of Islam. And one practical suggestion I have to say is I have a military background, so I draw upon that sometimes in my way of looking at things. In World War II, in the Air Force, in the Tank Corps, in the Navy, and so on, the objective was not to take out the enemy. The objective was not to take out the enemy. The objective was to take out their machines. Okay? Because they realized that this is what was going to win the war. It wasn't killing the pilot of the airplanes, it was killing the airplanes. Pilots could be replaced much more readily than the machines could. Sailors could be replaced much more readily than the ships. Tank men could be replaced much more readily than the tanks. When they ran out of the machinery, that's when they became weak. All right, and in Islam, it's pretty much the same way. We need to attack the kufr, not the individual. We need to address the kufr. We need to address the machine that is carrying them. But again, in a moderate way.
Yeah. So I think we all agree on the same. But the way it's stated is sometimes a little too rough or too harsh. And it's not suitable, as Dr. Brown said, for our time, for our mission as du'at, as chaplains who want to convey the message of Islam to, inshallah, to multitudes of people. So with this said, you probably understand now. I only sent you 9 pages from that book, 9 small pages, and the rest was about commanding the right and forbidding the good with mercy. Emphasizing and underlining the word mercy that I sent you, and I asked most of the questions in the quiz based on it. Okay, now there was a question posed by a sister just before the break, which is that, if I understood it correctly, her father told her never to speak to him about Islam, and he died as a non-Muslim. Was she wrong by not speaking to him about Islam and not making da'wah to him, or was this what she should have done based on his request? Do I understand your question correctly, sister?
Yes.
Okay. Now, by him, the way I see it and understand it is that previously you tried to make da'wah to him, and you spoke to him about Islam at least a little bit, at least by your appearance, if you did not say any words, and that produced a feeling of hostility in his heart towards you and towards what you stand for. So you already made what you could have done to convey the da'wah to him, and he did not want to listen anymore. So past that point, you just apply what Allah says in the Quran, the ayah that was cited earlier. وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا, which means if they strive with you so that you associate with me that which you do not know, do not listen to them, do not obey them, but yet treat them in this life in a good way. Okay, so I think you have done what the best you could have done for him, and like I say, in many cases like this, many people ask me. Many Muslims who were non-Muslims before, who embraced Islam, who converted to Islam from Christianity or other religions, they tell me, my parents died, are they going to be in hell? And the answer to this was in the handout that I sent to you, right? The answer to this was in the few pages that I sent to you, which is that there are people who are classified in our belief as Ahl al-Fatra, right? The people of Fatra, or the period of the period, the people of the period. And by period here, it means the period between Isa, Jesus, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which means the period when there were no messengers. So these people are people that were never exposed to the correct message of Islam. These people will be tried by Allah on the Day of Judgment. How will they be tried? They will be tried by Allah Azza wa Jal creating a fire and commanding them to enter it, knowing that this command is coming from Allah. If they obey Him, then they will find themselves in Jannah. Otherwise, they will truly be in the hellfire. So, knowing and believing in the ultimate fairness and justice of Allah, we know that the test that He will give them is equivalent to the test that people pass through in this life. I just said how. Because of Allah's justice, He will not give them a test lesser or stronger than our test. So they will be subjected to a test to indicate to show whether they are believers or not. And based on that, they will enter Jannah or hellfire based on the outcome of that test. Now, for the people who die, parents who die as non-Muslims, can we decide that they died as kafir that will abide in the hellfire? We don't know. What we know, and we hope, everybody can hope for his parents. I hope that maybe they were not exposed properly to Islam. Maybe I did not convey Islam to them correctly, and therefore they will be tested by Allah Azza wa Jalla on the Day of Judgment. Can we say for sure? We cannot say either way, because this is all in the hand of Allah, and He is the one who knows who learned the truth in this life and rejected it, and who never was exposed to it properly. So that's all what we can say, and that is all what we can promise them. So what can a person say for his parents? Can he say, "Oh Allah, forgive my parents"? No, you cannot make dua of mercy for them. All what we can say is that, "Oh Allah, I ask you to accept them of those of Ahl al-Fatra and give them the chance in the next life." And Allahu Alam, it's all in the hand of Allah. Fatra, not fitra. The period, fatra means period. Or fatra means the futur, the decline. The decline of the message. Okay, because the message declined for 600 years between Isa and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So it is fatra, not fitra. No, we don't know if they are. Some of them will be people who were children, who died as children. But the collective name for all of these is Ahl al-Fatra. So I don't know if I answered the sister's question satisfactorily. You want to add something? Dr. Brown wants to add something. Tfadal.
Just a quick comment from a brother who's been in the same situation. My father died in uncertain circumstances, meaning just that he made Shahada, but he had very, very bad Alzheimer's. And so I don't know if his Shahada was counted. But one hadith that really helped me, because I think what is underlying this question is sort of a sense of guilt. And we have to remember that Allah has written, this is one of the things that Allah has written regarding each individual before they are even born, whether they will die one of the blessed or whether they will die one of the people of the fire. And we are only to bear the message. But there was a hadith in which a man learned that the disbelievers would be in the fire, and his father had died a disbeliever, and he went to the Prophet ﷺ, very distressed about this hadith, and or this this teaching, and he asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "O Prophet of Allah, is my father in the fire?" And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was reported as having answered, "My father and your father is in the fire." And this somehow just helped me a great deal, because it shows the mercy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it also shows that we have to accept what Allah has written for us and for our loved ones.
Jazakallah khair. Okay. Anything else regarding this specific question?
Yes.
Okay. So there is another question which I believe was answered, if I understand it. It's a long question by a sister. She says, with non-Muslim neighbors and relatives in the West, one offered food from their festivals. Yeah, this was also covered. For example, they come and knock on your door and give you a plate or tray of food, desserts, sweets. How do we refuse it if it is offered, if it will offend them and push them away from any form of da'wah? Okay, now first of all, you do not have to reject it. First of all, if this is the first time that it happened, take it from them, because you do not want to make them feel offended. You do not have to eat it. You can feed it to the cat or to some other living being. But you do not have to eat it yourself. The other thing is, from that point on, or in general, make it clear to them. Your neighbors, your friends, your classmates, etc. Now that we cannot accept, in our religion, we cannot accept gifts that relate to a celebration. Okay? You can tell them also furthermore, we cannot even accept gifts from Muslims that offer them to idols or to graves or things like that. So this is part of our religion. So please do not offer me anything during your celebrations. You can give me something unrelated. And a question that relates to this now, it was not asked, I think I answered this, it was not asked, but I'm sure it is on the mind of some of you, is how about some, and we dealt with it many times in the past, how about some companies that give a gift to their employees every year end, which happens to be on Christmas or on New Year? Are they allowed to take this gift or this bonus, or they are not? And in this case, our answer used to be, and mind you that most of the time when we answered, we tried to refer to the ulama in getting their input, like Sheikh Al-Albani and his students, and the mashayikh of here, Sheikh Ibn Baz, Sheikh Ibn Uthaymeen, when they were alive, rahmatullah alayhim ajma'in. So we said the gift was not specifically linked with the Eid that they have, which is New Year or Christmas or any other Eid. It was the timing was such that they wanted to do it at that time, because it's the time when everybody is celebrating and so on. But it is not meant to be for that. It is a bonus, an annual bonus that they could have given it in July, okay, or in August or whatever. So in that case, it is permissible to take it. Wallahu a'lam.
This can be extended to something else, which is Christmas offers and sales. How about that? In the West.
Okay. I don't know if you will consider. Okay, I see your point. Inshallah, I will try to deal with it. Yeah. Okay, sister, go ahead. 1 second. Okay. Okay, about you had something related also?
Yes, I do. More study, not about Eid, but about charitable organizations. For example, and this is really a situation of my own, my son is autistic, and we have been applying for help from the government to deal with him, and they referred us to a charitable organization run by the Church of England, and they gave us a gift of a trampoline to occupy my son when he was distressed. Is it acceptable to take a gift from a charitable organization that belongs to another faith?
Okay, Jazakallah khair. This is another category of questions, but first let's finish with the first part. Brother Muhammad was asking about certain offers that they give on certain occasions like Christmas, New Year, 4th of July, etc. They offer a huge sales, and the sale is not meant because they specifically give value to these days or to these occasions. But it is because they want to do business, and it happens that this is the time when everybody is buying gifts and so on, so they try to take advantage of the consumers during that time. So the same thing as for the other case, I would say that this is, you can take advantage of these sales, and it's not related to this discussion of refusing gifts linked to the Eid. As for the sister's question, it's also, whether it's a Muslim or a non-Muslim. For a Muslim, it's even worse that they are celebrating, adding Eid to the normal ayat of the two ayat that we have, like a birthday. They invite, for example, your children to join in their birthday celebration of their child. Okay, this is not allowed in Islam. So what can you do? Just as we said in the other case, if they are ignorant Muslims, then you need to educate them, and you educate them by telling them, giving them some excuse, so that you do not offend them and you do not place a barrier between you and them for future da'wah. But at the same time, you have certain commitments in Islam that you cannot negotiate. So you do not send your children. You give an excuse. For example, today we have a certain commitment, and you do it. For example, we have to go somewhere, and you go to that somewhere. But for future reference, you tell them, please, in the future, we believe that we cannot we cannot celebrate birthdays, and therefore do not invite us and do not send us a cake or something on this occasion. And the same for us, we cannot give you presents on this occasion. But you have to apply the regulations of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong, which you probably went over them in the reading material of this week. You have to evaluate the situation and see whether commanding the right and forbidding the wrong can bring more harm than good. Then you have to change your approach or lower your level of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. About the same thing? Relating to the same thing?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, this is kind of like a practical example. Today is my birthday.
Okay.
And all of my extended family members, they're not Muslim. And from them, they don't understand that we don't celebrate and so on and so forth. Like my grandmother, and she's going to send me money. Okay? The money is going to come to my bank account. What do I do with the money? I can't tell her, no, do it, she's going to be crushed. So
he's saying send it to him. Okay. Okay. First of all, okay, I forgot first of all. I mentioned this. I'll answer this question first. Maybe I'll remember the other point. Okay, she sends you the money there are people who will do it no matter what. Okay, like my mother, for example. She makes sure on my birthday, which was a few days ago, she calls me and she says, Yani, may Allah bless this year for you, etc. Makes dua for me. And she knows that I do not celebrate birthdays, and she even tells people not to celebrate birthdays. But she thinks I am very special to her, so she should congratulate me at least. There are people who will do this. And even Facebook, sends you a message on your birthday. Since my official birthday is different from my regular birthday, they usually send me a message on 12th of May, which is soon, telling me that, happy birthday or something like that. So this is something that you cannot do anything about it. But for the money, you have to estimate in your mind, is she giving it to you specifically for the birthday, or she wanted to give you a gift and she found the good occasion suitable to give it to you? If it is the latter case, then you can take it, inshallah. But if you think that she would never have given you a gift if it was not a birthday, then this is specifically for this reason, and you should somehow give it away as charity or something.
Well, they kind of use it as an excuse to do something good for you.
That's what I'm saying. So you take it in that case.
So I take it in that case.
Yeah, inshallah. Aywa, sister, go ahead.
Okay, it's something that's very, often in the Arab countries right now, which is National Day. It's in every Arab country. The education on the National Day, and the teachers ask the students every, in every little like kindergarten, primary, middle school, high school, to bring a clothes fit to this National Day. They make a festival inside the schools. It's outside the streets, and if I told my child or something that you don't have to celebrate this day with your friends at school, it's kind of be, outcast, because you're not celebrating your national day. This is one part of the question. The second part is regarding the enjoying the right and forbidding the wrong. Do we have to do something with the school administration just to clarify to them, or just let it be? Like, even if we said something, I think it's going to be like, why you're eating that national day? It's our, I don't know, things like, our rights, something like that.
Okay. Tayyib, sister, first of all, if you read carefully the wording of the letter to school administrators that we went over last week, you see that it deals with these issues. And this is, in theory, how a Muslim's attitude should be, which is that we do not celebrate birthdays, we do not want to join in any celebration, not birthday, any celebration other than our two celebrations. Now, that is the principle. Now, there are cases where you cannot apply the principle. Like in some Muslim countries where people, like the government celebrates birthday and they expect you to join in certain activities. What can you do in this case? You have to apply the rules, the regulations of enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong. And as you probably heard from the Sheikh who was here earlier, that in many cases you have to weigh the two options, which means to speak and act or not to act. Which one will bring more harm or less harm, and take that. As the Prophet ﷺ said, "Saddidu wa qaribu." Saddidu wa qaribu, try to reach the goal, the aim. If not, then come as close to it as possible. And as Allah Azza wa Jal says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, which means have taqwa of Allah as much as you can. Sometimes you cannot act in a way to represent or reflect full taqwa. So you try to come as close to it as possible and ask Allah for forgiveness. So that's how our lives many times include a lot of compromises. But the compromises should not be the main feature in our life. The main feature is that we want to do things right, but if we are forced to compromise sometimes, we compromise but minimize the compromise as Allah Azza wa Jal says, فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ, about eating the dead meat, فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ, which means whoever is obliged or forced or in a necessity to eat the flesh, the dead flesh of dead animals, then it is okay for him, as long as he is not baghin, he does not transgress the limits, or adin, which means he is related meaning he does not get over involved in it. So I hope that this answers this question. Maybe you have something to add to it?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment as a guest here, and a Native American who has lived here in the kingdom for 17 years. I feel in some of these questions that it's getting a little bit astray from the topic of chaplaincy in America, in the West. One thing in particular that I do have to say is that I get profoundly uncomfortable when we talk about anything which challenges the decisions or the policies of this country. I consider myself a guest here, and a guest here in the kingdom, and I very much appreciate their, extending their hospitality of having me here and keeping me here. I am not comfortable being in a circle in which we are discussing political decisions, anything that, any political decision that has been implemented by the government, and I just would ask that we stay on point. On point meaning discussing the situation in the West. All right, that's just my personal perspective. But if we get into discussing politics or anything of that nature, I'm afraid that I'm going to have to excuse myself, because it is my personal policy not to be involved in such things. Okay? And that's just, I just have to make that statement.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, and I think we made it clear already that there are certain decisions that are made by governments. Wherever you are, not only here, in any place of the world, there are things that probably you would disagree with. But in that case, if you believe that strongly that this is in discord with Islam, then as I said, اتقوا الله ما استطعتم. Have taqwa of Allah as much as you can. Apply this to yourself, and then enjoy the right and forbid the wrong, according to the principles that we discussed earlier.
And if unless I am wrong, there's even hadith which teaches us that we should support the ruler as long as he enjoins the prayer. And I don't know of any country in the world that enjoins the prayer as much as this one here. Obviously, it's not, maybe the way that we would like to be, and that we still see people who escape from the obligation of prayer, but the bottom line is that the hadith does make it clear to us.
Yeah.
And maybe Dr. Al-Jabali, you can, I can't say that.
No, it is correct. The hadith you mentioned is correct. But I mean, we have been talking about this once and again. Last week, if you remember, the letter of allegiance that I discussed also emphasizes that we have to live according to the agreements with whichever country we are living in. We are fortunate now that, alhamdulillah, we are living in a country which implements Islam better than any other country on the surface of the earth. But you can be in situations in the West or in the other than the West where you are living in regimes where you are forced to do things that are not according to Islam. So how do you behave in that case? Again, we mentioned this in the letter of allegiance, and now in the commanding the right and commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Okay, the other set of questions or issue that was raised by Abu Ayyub is about taking gifts from charitable organizations. And what I want to say is that there is even a wider matter than this, which is taking money from welfare, right? Welfare. I don't know what they call it in England. Social security or welfare. So this is something that is offered by the non-Muslim governments for all of their citizens who are eligible for it. Okay, whether it's an organization or the big organization, which is the government. Are you allowed to take it or not? And the answer in this case, again, after a lot of discussion with the ulama, is that if you really need it, you can take it, because it's permissible to take gifts from the non-Muslims, and you, as being in covenant with this government, living on their ground, then you are eligible for this help. That because otherwise, there's no other help that you can expect, like zakah money or something like that from them. And so in that case, you can take it within the limits of your need and not beyond that. Like, some people that we know, they just keep taking welfare money without need, without reason. They pretend that they forge their records and pretend that they do not have any property and anything, so that they continue to deserve that money, and without working or anything. Okay, so as long as you really need that help, inshallah, it is okay for you to take it. Okay?
Chef, one question. In the West, many Muslim youth end up going to clubs in the evenings, or even alcohol dens, and some enthusiastic Muslim brothers take the initiative of going into the clubs and giving them dawah. Is that something to be encouraged, or how we go about that? Because we cannot find those youth anywhere else besides the weekends and the clubs. And just a second question before
Sinning for the sake of Allah.
is about the follow-up da'wah. But some people become Muslim, and the person who gave the da'wah, they know it will be seen after that. Just comment to encourage them to be steadfast and continue in following up the da'wah and teaching them more than just the kalima.
I didn't understand your second question.
The second question was about a person becoming Muslim at your hands, for example.
Yeah.
And you take a step back, you say, okay, it's took the kalima, I have to carry on about my daily life, and the importance here...
Yeah, you have responsibility.
Responsibility to...
Okay. Okay, طيب. As for the second point, the first point, we'll be discussing, I save your question because we'll be discussing youth issues in 2 weeks, inshallah. The week after next. So why don't you postpone it to then? As for the first question, if you know that a person has embraced Islam, you have a responsibility. Like a father who has a child. Now you are responsible for this child. You cannot say, go and live your life. I do not care about you. I already gave birth to you. No. You have to nurture that child until it is able to stand on its feet securely. Same for that, I know, I had a situation, and we do not want to spend too much time on this. I had a situation where, an incident where some brothers came to us from, those brothers from Dawah and Tabligh and so on. They go and visit different cities, and so they came to brothers from our town. They went on a khuruj of theirs, and then they came back. And one of them told us, he stood and was giving a talk. He said, Alhamdulillah, in this trip, we had 12 people embrace Islam. I asked him, how did this happen? MashaAllah, Jazakumullah khairan. He said, we stopped at a rest area to pray. And they asked us, what are you doing? And we told them, we are praying, we are Muslims. And they said, how do we become Muslims? They said, you become Muslim by saying, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammadan Rasulullah. So they said it. So they became Muslim. I said, okay, where are they? They said, we don't know. Do you have contact with them? No. So khalas, they said the shahada, they left them in the rest area, and they went on their way. This is not the way to give da'wah, because da'wah needs to... I said, we do not have time to spend more on this issue, because there's another topic that the brothers need to discuss. So we need to give them the time, inshallah. If it is urgent, we'll deal with it. Otherwise...
We have different types of Muslim groups, sects, etc. And, what I'm asking is, enjoying the rights of the does it have to be on something which is ijma? Or is this a different sort of thing from scholars? So
Okay.
Brother Muhammad, we have 14 minutes for free topics.
40 minutes, we have limited time. For this, I think it's already answered under the topic of regulations for enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong. Because if you have, please brother, if you have certain convictions and they are based on correct evidence from the Quran and Sunnah, then you apply the regulations of enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong. If there are different groups who have different understanding, you cannot force yourself on them. And we have dealt with this so many times. You do what you believe is right for yourself, but for them, all you can do is advise them, right? And then, at its 3 levels of enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong that we talked about earlier.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sisters, if you can distribute the characteristics of the caller, and if you can get into everybody, if you can get into groups of 3 or 4, have a discussion around the 5 characteristics. It's a summary almost from part of the reading you have, and refer to the current du'at that we have in the West, and see if they are really following some of these principles or not. Because we have a lot of people here in Dawah in the West that not necessarily really following the basic or having the basic characteristics of a convert to Islam. Like I said, it's in the reading that Shaykh Muhammad gave. This is a slight variation. Just if you can spend 2 to 3 minutes in groups looking at these characteristics and how they apply to the modern day callers to Dawah that we have.
This is the character of that. First the education, then disaster. So that's why
Don't spend too much time on this.
yeah, it's been done already. It's been done already. Oh no, once I finish the discussion. The same slide, the other one, this
You can touch it. Interesting.
Which one? The Western, yeah, I'm skipping this one. Just for this. Yeah. No, just take some discussion. To see how the du'as are applying.
That's too sensitive. You can have the live are applying this. How the large are applying this. Yeah. Yeah, it gets sensitive. Like, no, we're going to start talking about these whole groups and then we don't want to. So they're all doing different. Anything else to add?
Assalamu alaikum, bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Regarding these 6 points, are there any questions regarding them or comments on their application or anything you would like to add to them? Yes, brother. We only want to spend a few minutes on this before we move on because this has been discussed and information is available. Wait, brother, you mean? You're done?
If, I don't know, I think courage can be a point in the 6 points because it will take courage to give da'wah.
It takes courage to give da'wah and to be patient upon the hardships of da'wah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of characteristics that you can add to the da'i that are part of Islam, and we see in the model of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
There should be something about what not to do as well. And one of the things that I've seen people do is you might call it confrontational da'wah.
Right, that goes back to wisdom, right? So it doesn't go into details of applications of do's and don'ts, but it would fall under wisdom of not being confrontational. Also gentleness, not being gentle, not confrontational. So those go back to that, and definitely you can come up with a lot of more details under each one of do's and don'ts for the da'i. Anything else? There's one thing I'd like to add is of course it should, yeah, and it goes with knowledge. Sincerity, ikhlas, and when you're calling to da'wah, that you're not calling to yourself, you're calling to the message of the Quran and Sunnah and the da'wah that the scholars call to. You're not calling to yourself, and you don't want yourself to be praised because you don't want to become famous to become famous. You care about the message reaching others, whether people know you or don't. And nowadays it becomes even harder when anything you say and do can have thousands of followers and hundreds of thousands of followers on YouTube and Facebook and other social media. A person has to be very careful not to let that get into their heads and make that their intention rather than calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that could be a workshop by itself. Yeah. Anything else from the sister's side?
Dr. Brown?
I was just struck in reading these over, read them over rather quickly right now because this is the first time I'm seeing the paper, but I was struck by the issue of the morality because I think this answers the question that was voiced earlier, and it's one that comes up frequently in the West about sinning for the sake of Allah. You know, this headline that is used regarding the issue of, for example, going to the bars looking for brothers to make da'wah to and things like this. And I just want to remind everybody of the importance of the high moral example. There are a lot of stories of people who have become Muslim just because they admire the character of a Muslim man or a woman. And there are a lot of stories of people who basically look at those who call themselves Muslim and saying, what kind of Islam is this? Because they fall into trying to appeal to the non-Muslims on the non-Muslims' own turf, so to speak. And I just think that's something that has to be avoided. Remember that the number one person that you are making da'wah to, the number one person who you are trying to protect in this whole process is yourself. Okay? And then after that, your family and your neighbors and so on. But it all comes back to your own personal accountability to Allah before anything else.
I need just to add one thing, because my experience with Jamaat al-Tabligh, we need to use the tool of the day. Sending message, email, letters. It is better than they stand in the masjid, please show us if a brother around is not coming to the masjid. They go and immediately knock at the door, and when he knows Jamaat al-Tabligh, he slams the door in their face. But if his neighbor Christian comes, he receives them with smiling face. We need we need to use the tools of the day. So we live in the 21st century. It is good to send a letter, and it is good to expect you to, if he welcomes you, go. So the da'i also, he needs to really to be careful when he gives the da'wah.
I think this comes back to the issue of wisdom, which was mentioned here. One of the key characteristics is just that, I think. We all share the enthusiasm. That's why we're here. We all share the enthusiasm, and we all share the caring for the people. And we understand what the risk is, the fire at the end. But in the end, you have to apply wisdom to your da'wah, recognizing, those people who will slam the door in your face. You have to apply the da'wah with wisdom and not chase after those who do not want to be chased after.
Right.
In any case, my understanding is you don't want to spend too much time on this topic. So,
one thing I'd like to add before we move on, inshallah, this will be hopefully the last point, is that understanding the person you're calling to. The Prophet ﷺ understood that there were people on the brink of Islam. They didn't have the in-depth iman that the Sahaba did, and he treated them kindly and would give them what they would want as long as it's not sinful. Some of them would just want some camels, and that would keep them happy and enter into Islam. He'd give one of them 100 camels, and he's the most generous person, so he would come to the Prophet ﷺ to strengthen his faith. The Prophet ﷺ would take into consideration what would call those people to Islam as long as it's not something sinful. So whether it was a case of giving camels, and this is part of zakat to soften people to Islam, or it can be putting things that aren't directly related to Islam, sports activities for people in the masjid, and so many other ways to draw people without having to be direct or harsh or calling them out, things that they will like to relate to. You have an example in the Prophet ﷺ regarding this. Inshallah, we'll move on now to the next part of our session.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. This topic should have been a workshop by itself, the restrictions of the program. So we've had to combine this topic with today's topic. Sheikh Ahmed and I will just spend maybe 20 to 25 minutes looking at just some of the issues regarding Western and Islamic education, and addressing really so I want to look at just the summary of the goals of Western education, what it's based on, characteristics or characterize the nature of Islamic education. We look at the vision of effective teaching and learning in Islam, the purpose of Islamic education, and there are a number of recommendations of how teaching Islam and strategies. There are 6 points that we're going to discuss, and then Sheikh Ahmed is going to focus on a couple of things at the end, looking at, for example, the theory of evolution and the Islamic viewpoint. Obviously these are large topics, but we have a number of slides to show the areas where there are commonalities and there are areas where they're completely contradictory to Islam. And likewise, maybe just a few minutes on this thing about Big Bang Theory and the Islamic viewpoint. This will be discussed towards the end. You can see this? Okay. Really, from a Western point of view, there is no consensus as to a unified definition, really, of what are the goals and objectives of Western education. They've evolved over the years with the different philosophers. What happens at the moment, we seem to see the United Nations and the Human Rights Commissions, etc., mandating the Millennium Goals of education, etc. And here's something I managed to get, it's around 10 years old, but I think they still stand today. And if you look at it on the surface, it looks very good and it looks very Islamic. You know, if you look at the aims of education, the development of the child's personality, talents, and mental and physical abilities to their fullest potential. One of the objectives they have for the member states. Number 2, the preparation of the child for a responsible life in a free society. Obviously there's an issue there. In the spirit of understanding peace, which we support, tolerance, equality of sexes, friendship amongst all people, ethnic, national and religious groups, and persons of indigenous origin. You know, a lot of this generally is in line with Islamic education, Islamic principles about tolerance, about peace, but really the definitions and their understanding of these topics really do differ from an Islamic point of view. You know, life in a free society that's purely based on capitalism, individualistic perspective, and an Islamic society is different. Equality of sexes, we know it's equal. Men and women from an Islamic perspective are equal but different. And Allah has assigned responsibilities and elevated in certain situations the man over the woman, because Allah has the ultimate wisdom behind these decisions. So, you know, there are some differences, but these are, if you look at some of the principles that Western education today, and it always has been pushing on these premises. If you look at Islamic education, you have the concept of knowledge, which is really bound and is intricately intertwined. It can't really be separated. It's part of the belief system, and it bases on this principle of Tawheed. Islamic education integrates all knowledge and disciplines with the Islamic ideology, you know, with the creed. So it's all separate. It's all integrated in one. And this is the key. If you looked at the Westerner, the definition from the United Nations, there's no mention of a super being or Allah. It's all from them. For us, from an Islamic perspective, Allah is at the central point, and He is the definer and who defines Islamic education, and everything is thrown back to our belief in Allah. Whereas you look at the Westerner's perspective, there's no mention really of any higher being. I'll just skip a couple of slides. There's a lot of details. It's really to give us we have the Islamic education that's being taught today. You know, it's not as effective as we'd like it to be. Muslim children are, you know, in terms of being taught, let's say, the theory, Islam is being taught more so of passing information rather than values that the individuals will act upon. And that's really where there needs to be a change. And some of the educators, they identify that in terms of the modern day Islamic education, there's issues in the way it's being taught. Yeah.
I'm sorry, do you mean by that last point, it's not practical as far as focusing on theories? Do you mean by it's not really practical?
No, what's happening, more emphasis is being given to theory, so it's taught more from a theoretical point of view and not as to apply it in the life of a Muslim. You know, Islamic education is more so on tarbiyah, which is really about changing and transforming, and you'll see in the coming slides.
Yeah, another point there is that I was looking just the other day because I had a presentation to make for examples of Muslim children being taught in the West by Muslim teachers, and I couldn't find any.
I think this point here will clarify. No, the approach is primarily focusing on conveying information about Islam and not necessarily transforming, using this information to transform the hearts and minds of the youth. So we're looking at really in terms of Islamic values of education. There needs to be a focus in terms of beliefs, values, manners, feelings, attitudes, moral literacy skills, and there should be focused on in terms of contemporary education as it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, kind of an all-inclusive, all-rounded approach.
And in terms of that being applied during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, we see that in the way the companions learned the Quran. They would take 5 ayat and learn how to recite them, and they would know their meaning and apply them in their daily life, and then they would move on to the next 5. And this is how they memorize the Quran, and this is why we see people like Umar and Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma memorizing Surah Al-Baqarah in 8 or 12 years, and today it can be memorized in 2 months. But a lot of it was memorizing, understanding with action, and you don't move until you really do apply it in your daily life.
If I could make a comment, I think one of the biggest problems with making dawah in the West right now is everybody is looking for a rapid approach, okay? And they're not looking for dawah as a slow, methodical process with the end goal at some point in the indefinable future, but let's get there by the correct process and let's let things, take their time. Whenever I am asked this question about what is the best way, this is a question that always comes up, what is the best way of making dawah in the West? My answer is always the same, and that is that each Muslim should embody the noble virtues of this religion and let the people around him or her see those noble virtues, okay? And what we're talking about here, about the educational system failing, the one thing that just keeps coming up in my mind, the bells that keep ringing, is that the ultimate responsibility for the education of the children is not in the classroom, it's in the home. And where the system is failing for most children in the West, including teenagers, is from the parents. And that is something we see over and over again. The parents who drop their kids off for 2 hours at after Salat al-Jumu'ah for whatever course is being given at the local masjid, and they think their job is done for the week. But as far as what they themselves are doing, the values that their children are bringing up, are learning by growing up in that household and seeing what their parents actually do, that is where the children are being failed.
Thank you.
I just wanted to share with you, because I wish someone had been there to share it with me, that all of my children were raised on Quran, alhamdulillah, and at the same time they were memorizing Quran. They were also immersed in the language. At the time, we had a lot of people that were very critical of that and made it very difficult for us to do. But Allah blessed us to do it. They grew up in the Quran. And I look at my children today, and you can really, really see the effect that it's had on them. Every time we talk about anything, they go directly to Quran. They go directly to Hadith for whatever principle or idea or, just 100%. That's where they go. They were also raised in the masjid. So I'm older, I've been through it. I was raised non-Muslim, I became Muslim, my children were born Muslim. So I have this to share with you, and I wanted to share it with you. Please raise your children in the Quran and with the language and in the masjid.
Here, there is a difference in teaching about Islam and about being Muslims. There is a fundamental difference. So we need to understand, and this is what Dr. Brown was saying, really embodying the skills and what the sister is saying in terms of acting upon and being influenced. So not just to teach about Islam, but about being a Muslim. And this leads us to what we look at the the goal of Islamic education is not to fill the children's minds with information. It's not just to download information, but rather teach them what it really means to be a Muslim. So if you look at this kind of approach, you have that Islamic education is more of a dynamic than a static approach, and this means it's the belief that the vision or the mission of Islam is to positively remember we are here to transform the world in terms of to worship Allah, and that means the purpose of education is to prepare young men and women capable of carrying out this mission, transformation in change in character. Yeah, and then we mentioned this time and time, Islamic education, it's having this power to inspire and transform students in the process of tarbiyah, Islamic upbringing. Okay, so there's some, like I think I mentioned, or it was on the first slide, these slides are taken and adapted from some slides at a Muslim college based in Australia. They presented a number of principles for effective teaching and learning, and I'll quickly just go through these 6 points, some suggestions to improve the teaching and learning of Islamic education, whether it's in Islamic schools or in madrasas. So, okay.
Okay. The difference, actually I have this, what I'm saying, the summary of a large section I have in a book I'm working on, which is Path of the Believers, about the difference between Islamic and secular education. And the difference is, the basic difference is that there are two different goals. Islamic education is supposed to be to fulfill the goal for which we were created, which is وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Whereas for the secular education, which is upheld by the West and the East and other countries, most countries on earth, is to create people who can enjoy their life and the luxury of this life in the best possible way. Now, of course, Islam is not against, living an easy life, but we should never forget the main goal that we should work for, and therefore base our educational theories and principles on this. It does not mean that there is no meeting between the Islamic education and the Western education, because there are certain established educational strategies that are applicable in Islam and in Western education. And we have had so many workshops at Taiba University about education, and every time, almost every single time, I give the comment to the speaker that whatever he said is good and helpful, and whatever established theories of education, educational theories or strategies, I did not find even one that did not have a precedence in the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. So he practiced the best level, the highest level of educational principles and strategies and tactics and so on. So it doesn't mean that Muslims are doing this. It means that most of the time they are neglecting this. Okay, and that we only accept the principles that come to us based on Western research. But we should never keep it away from my mind, that there are basic differences in the goals, and there's a lot of common in the approaches, and the correct approach is the approach of the Sunnah.
Okay, so just quickly, I want to just a couple of minutes. Based on the research here, looking at effective teaching and learning when it comes to Islamic studies, they come up with 6 points from the research. To be meaningful, I'll go through them one by one. To meaningful, integrative, values-based, challenging, active, and to have some instructional standards. So, what do we mean by meaningful? That the student should feel that the content that they are studying is worth learning because it has meaning and it has relevance to the lives of those being taught. Students must see the usefulness and potential application of this knowledge to their everyday lives. Integration, remember we said it should be integrated, engaging in the child. It looks at all the aspects of the child's development. And it's in line, as the Shaykh Muhammad saying, this is in line with what the Westerners look at as well. The spiritual, the emotional, the psychological, the physical aspects. So it's all around it, integrated. And we know this, it's applicable across time and place and culture. And Islam, we know, outdates and it will stay until Allah has completed the deen, and it will stay until the end of the time and until Qiyamah. Values-based, and one of the basic is we want to produce good model citizens, human beings, individuals that were created by Allah to worship Allah, but to conduct their affairs in society. Challenging, so we're saying in terms of having activities that activate the mind, whether it's critical thinking, critical learning. If you want to create thinkers, the activities in the education needs to challenge and maximize the potential that you have within a child. Active engagement in terms of the teachers and the learners. The teachers need to, update their skills. They need to be qualified. They need to look at modern research. But again, the basis on the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ and the Quran as the main. But there's no harm in looking at contemporary research in terms of teaching methods and instruction. And in terms of the last one, looking at standards, and I think this is where we Muslims maybe lack a little bit, having benchmarks, having quality assurance policies and standards and accountability so that the instruction that's been given is of good quality. Islamic schools, unfortunately, are known in many cases for poor standards. Okay.
Go ahead. 5 minutes left, please. 5 minutes.
Okay, so basically, this goes back to a theoretical issue that they always grill students with the evolution theory of Darwin and stuff that they teach children in public schools once they first start learning about science and biology and so forth, at the foundation, where did humans come from. And they'll start the evolution theory and the Big Bang theory and how it started with a simple cell and developed all the way, and then finally you had an ape, and then humans developed into an ape. The famous evolution theory of Darwin, which of course is rejected completely in Islam because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly states that He has created Adam from dirt. And that we all came from Adam, human beings, and that He created everything. So Allah created all species, including human beings, and the first human being was Adam. He created Hawa, his wife, from him. So we reject this because there's clear texts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that tell us different, and that we know this theory is completely false. But then again, we don't have an issue of the theory of evolution, meaning species being able to adapt to their environment, because we see this in front of our own eyes. Science proves that species can adapt to their environment, and this is also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah creates and sustains, and He allows and decrees that His creation adapts to their environment in different ways. So if there's something that's authentically proven in science, then Islam does not reject it. And there is no way, as Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah says, that true science and intellect goes against the text of the Quran and Sunnah. And if there seems to be a contradiction, then it is either in the theories that are incorrect, that they believe to be correct, or in our understanding of the verses or the hadith. And it's impossible for for a verse of the Quran or authentic hadith to be scientifically incorrect. And this is from the beauty of Islam. And one last point is that we should not try to make science the benchmark or the criteria to authenticate our texts, the Quran and Sunnah. A lot of people fall into this trap, and they say science proves this. Okay, yeah, Quran says that. Then tomorrow they say science was wrong. It does not prove this. Then you get stuck. Okay, is the Quran wrong now? Because you decided that the ayah means this theory. So don't be quick to judge that this ayah is referring to this scientific fact, which is not even a fact, it's a theory that they may change. Things that they said is 100% agreed upon by scientists, they change after a certain time. So do not make the Quran and Sunnah follow the scientific findings. Rather, we know that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says is true and what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says is true. If it agrees with science, alhamdulillah. If it doesn't, then the problem is not in the Quran and the Sunnah. The problem is either in the facts that aren't facts, the things that they claim are facts, or in our understanding of the Quran and Sunnah. So be very careful with these scientific miracles of the Quran and Sunnah. A lot of people fall into this, and then it could be an easy way for somebody to leave Islam even when he says, oh my God, I just realized that the Quran goes against science. And these scientific facts are true, and therefore the Quran says otherwise. And we've read and seen people leave Islam because they base their faith upon this. Our faith is based on knowing that the Quran is the word of Allah. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ challenged Quraysh, the most eloquent of Arabs, to come with something like it. And if they were not able to, then this shows clearly 100% that is not from human nature and not from humankind. Allah Ta'ala. I don't know. But I'd like to leave for Dr. Brown and Sheikh Jibali, because medicine and physics, there are some concepts that they come across in their books and in their fields that slightly contradict Islam and how they would put it under the Islamic lens from the principles of physics or anything in the science of medicine or anything related.
What are you speaking of exactly?
Like things that you've come across in your education that might contradict some Islamic teachings, so you improvise it to conform with Islam.
Do you want me to speak about this?
Just very short, as an example. It could be a whole lecture on this.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a huge lecture, but first of all, let me say that I have to agree with most of what you said. But I have to caution that I don't feel that saying it in this way is a particularly constructive approach. You will find many people in the West who are very attached to theories of evolution. And you'll find, that if you just, give them a blanket rebuttal and say, oh, we just don't believe in that, we come across as discrediting ourselves in that there are aspects of the theories of natural selection, which I'm not saying that they're valid, but I'm just saying that there's not much benefit in refuting them. For example, whenever this subject of evolution comes up, the point I make is just that I have no problem with the concept that 50 million years ago, horses were the size of cats, and now they're the size that they are. Or that 50 million years ago, dogs were the size of trees, and now they're the size that they are. Okay, I have no problem with the fact that it's possible that some species, through the process of being selected according to adaptative principles, evolved over time. What I have a problem with is saying that was a process of the course of nature. okay, which is one of the points that you made right here. And the things that Islam refutes directly are the things that we should speak. That's basically that we as Muslims believe that Allah created mankind as a separate creation. That's number one. Number two is that if animal species did evolve from another animal species, who was the architect behind that evolution? Okay, it's not a random process. It's a process which was brought about by a designer. Now, however, I just think the strongest refutation of these points is to go back to the origin. Okay, because a building is only as strong as its foundation. So the bottom line is this. The scientists in general make one major mistake, and it's a fatal error. And that fatal error is the error of shirk. Okay? The one sin that Allah tells us He will not forgive. The shirk in their circumstance, in my opinion, is the arrogance of intellect. The arrogance of intellect. And one thing that you notice in reading the Quran is how often Allah speaks of arrogance, and how often when He speaks of arrogance, He is speaking of the disbelievers. And when He speaks of humility, He's speaking of did I say that correctly? When He's speaking of arrogance, He's speaking of the disbelievers, and when He's speaking of humility, He's speaking of the believers. And one thing you see over and over again is how arrogant the scientists are about placing priority on their science over anything else. That is their shirk, is that they worship science more than anything else. Now let me give you an example. About 10 or 15 years ago, I did a series of talks called The Big Questions. And what it pointed out was that almost everybody at some point in their life asks these big questions. Who am I and why am I here? Okay? When you talk to the scientists, they always trace everything back to the Big Bang and to the process of evolution. But let's look at that from the source. If you're going to talk about the Big Bang, the scientists of this day are now saying that before the Big Bang, and this is the Penrose-Hawking theory, which is the main theory which is validated by all scientists around the world right now. They basically say that before the Big Bang there was nothing. No time, no space, no energy, no matter. Okay, now, they are basically saying that if there was no time, no space, no energy, matter, what was there before the Big Bang? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay? Which means that the Big Bang came out of absolutely nothing. They are not leaving room for anything before the Big Bang other than a transcendent creator. And what they're basically saying is, give me one good miracle and then I can explain the rest. What they're basically saying is, give me a good miracle, namely the Big Bang, something that comes from nowhere, and then I'll explain the rest with science. But it doesn't work that way. You can't have this cataclysmic event and come up with theories that science rests upon, such as the theories of thermodynamics and the theory of entropy, saying that every process degenerates into chaos unless it has a greater control overriding it, and not apply that to the Big Bang. So where's the greater control overriding the biggest cataclysmic event that occurred in creation, if not the creator who had control over it? When you have people asking you about evolution, ask them, what kind of evolution are you talking about? They will always come back to what you just briefly touched on right now. But ask them, whoa. Go back to the beginning. Go back to chemical evolution. And they will all say, what? Chemical evolution. I mean, organisms did not come from nowhere. The chemicals had to evolve into particles which could then form the building blocks of the amino acids, which were the building blocks of the proteins, blah, 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 blah. So how about the chemical evolution? Originally, chemical evolution was suggested by experiments performed by Stanley Miller in the laboratory of Harold Urey, in which he took chemical compounds which were largely reducing compounds, okay, such as hydrogen and ammonia and water vapor and so on, and he performed experiments in which, submitting them to the conditions of supposedly the primordial Earth, he was able to isolate amino acids. But what was found out later was he was using the wrong compounds. Those compounds did not exist in the primordial atmosphere. When they repeated those studies in modern time, even he himself was not able to duplicate his results. Chemical evolution fails the test. The chemicals of the time of the primordial Earth could not have evolved into the building blocks of amino acids. And this is well proven in this time. And it goes on and on and on, but when Richard Dawkins, the primary proponent of evolution, right, when he was challenged about one of the points that I brought up about 12 or 13 years ago, because one point I made was, okay, you use this theory of natural selection for explaining the progression of species, but you can explain how a bird's beak got longer, you can explain how a salamander became a turtle or so on, and it all sounds good. But how can you explain the quality of life inside these organisms? Where did the life come from? And I just recently was watching a YouTube debate in which Dawkins was asked, where did the life come from? And he said, we don't know. But I have faith that science will figure it out. Okay, now the point there is quite obvious and quite clear. Okay, so he's a man of faith. It's just that his faith is in his false god of science. And this theme replays itself over and over again. Let me end just with one quick little anecdote, okay, which I think says it all. When I was a child, there was kind of this joke that the scientists used to tell. And the joke was that, there's this prominent scientist who's standing on the stage who's talking about evolution, the Big Bang, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the talk, an old lady gets up in the audience and she says I have to preface this. One of the explanations that the naturalists are now proposing is when they're asked where did life come from, they say it came from outer space. They say that life was implanted here on Earth by aliens. Now, think about it, and you realize this doesn't answer the question. Where did the aliens get their life from? And where did they get their life from the aliens who implanted on their planet, and. Okay, so in the end, it just, it's an endless sequence of where did the life come from? Okay, back to the joke. So the joke the scientist used to tell was that the scientist presents his theory of origins, and then this old lady gets up in the audience, and she says, "Oh, young man, you're so silly. Everybody knows that the Earth is balancing on the back of a giant turtle." And everybody laughs, and the scientist sort of, arrogantly says, "Oh, well, my dear lady, what's the turtle standing on?" And the lady says, "Oh, you're so stupid. It's turtles all the way down." And everybody laughed because it sounds so silly. But now the scientists of our age are not saying that it's turtles all the way down. They're saying it's aliens all the way up. Now, the point is that the thing that you can attack on the proponents of evolution and the Big Bang is the most sensitive point. These people are arrogant. They worship their intellect. If you can humiliate them in their own field, you've won. And that's just my suggestion on how to tackle this topic. There's a great deal more, and you can find a lot of information, very useful information. It's mostly through Christian scientists, but on the subject of intelligent design.
Yeah, you need to sign before you leave, please, and nicely, please.
سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
School teachers, they don't use them.